أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This session began with a beautiful recitation of what is known as Ayat-e-Istikhlaf. It contains one of the most iconic and magnificent promises Allah has ever made with the people in the history of world religions. It is the promise of Khilafat. Hazrat Muslim Maud has cautioned us that this is not a prophecy about Khilafat. It is a promise. The verse sets out conditions about the establishment and continuation of Khilafat that we need to meet as a prerequisite. It embodies a promise, but in doing so, it puts a huge responsibility on our collective shoulders. It's Allah's promise regarding Khilafat, and fortunately or unfortunately, it also depends on us. Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu says, मगर याद रखना चाहिए कि ये एक वादा है, पेशगोई नहीं। अगर मुसलमान ईमान बिल खिलाफत पर कायम नहीं रहेंगे और उन अमाल को तर्क कर देंगे जो खिलाफत के क़याम के लिए ज़रूरी हैं, तो वो इस इनाम के मुस्तहिक नहीं रहेंगे और खुदा ताला पर वो इल्ज़ाम नहीं दे सकेंगे कि उसने अपना वादा पूरा नहीं किया। But remember that this is a promise, not a prophecy. If Muslims no longer believe in Khilafat, and if they ignore the things that are mandatory for the establishment of Khilafat, they will no longer be deserving of this reward. They will not be able to blame Allah Ta'ala for not fulfilling His promise. Explaining this point, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Khamis, Ayyadallahu Ta'ala bin Nasrihil Aziz, emphasized that the promise of Khilafat is inextricably linked with the standard of obedience to Khilafat or to Khulafa. Hazur says, Allah Ta'ala ने ये नहीं फरमाया कि ज़रूर मुसलमानों में खिलाफत जारी रहेगी, बल्कि वादा फरमाया है जो बाज़ शराइत के साथ मशरूत है और उनमें से सबसे पहली शर्त ये है कि कामिल अतात हो। पहली खिलाफत राशिदा का तसलसल तभी टूटा था कि मुसलमान अतात से बाहर हुए। मुसलमान हकीकी खिलाफत से उस वक़्त महरूम किए गए जब वो अतात से बाहर हुए। Hazur says, Allah Ta'ala did not say that Khilafat will definitely be established and continue in Muslims. Allah has made a conditional promise, and the most important condition is perfect obedience, kamil atat. Khilafat-e-Rashida was discontinued because Muslims stopped being obedient. So it's a very fascinating subject and incredibly relevant in today's world. The Holy Quran uses the metaphor of a lamp or flashlight in which Allah is the light, His prophets are the glass that covers and safeguards that light. And Khilafat is the reflector that magnifies and spreads the divine light. In this understanding, Khilafat is nothing but a God-given mechanism for amplifying and magnifying the message of Allah Ta'ala after the death of His prophets, to spread and complete the mission of His prophets. If we did not have Khilafat today, it would be impossible to obey Allah Ta'ala. It would be impossible to avoid shirk. It would be impossible to love and obey the Holy Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi wa sallam. And it would be impossible to have an ummah because there is no ummah without a khalifa. Hazrat Muslim Maud once said that if a non-Ahmadi was transplanted to Medina during the lifetime of Rasul Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they would be utterly lost because they have no idea what obedience to Allah Ta'ala is, what loving Rasul Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam is. How do you obey Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam? But for an Ahmadi trained by Khilafat and the nizam that Khilafat has put into place, an Ahmadi would know exactly what to expect and will effortlessly become a part of the intricate nizam that Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam had created in Medina. They will not ask questions. They will not fight over the length of our beards. They will know that they have been told to stand on that post and they will fit in. That is the blessing of Khilafat. So today I'll try to speak about the transformative effect of Khilafat on us through this lens. And I would like to share some incidents that highlights how Khilafat transforms individuals, families, and indeed nations. So when I was assigned this speech, I thought about how I would structure my presentation. I'm not an orator, I'm not eloquent, and I don't know how to make speeches. I was struggling, but then it dawned on me that I don't need to do anything. I just need to get out of the way. Let Khilafat and the incidents of Khilafat that we all know, let that get to you, and that's all that is needed. Each one of those incidents have the power to transform us. And these incidents are not unique in any way. Every Ahmadi has been a witness to so many signs during the last 125 years of Khilafat that it is impossible to count them. Just during this Jalsa, when I arrived on Friday, I met a Khadim who told me that he just finished his degree in a very difficult field of study. And it was only because of the prayers and guidance that he received from Hazrat Khalifatul Masih in Islamabad. Then I also met another father yesterday, right outside. He had 2 sons, and I told him, I said, they look much different in the last 6 months. They're growing children in college. And they said that they went to England and they met Hazur, and that one mulaqat transformed them. That's what you see in them today. Last week I was traveling and I spoke to a cancer survivor, and she told me that she's alive today only because of the prayers of Hazur and also the medicine, the dua and the dawa, when she was sick. Someone also told me that they were facing financial ruin. Hazur saved them from financial ruin because unsolicited, Hazur sent a message saying that she had a property in Pakistan, and she said that somebody is going, be careful, somebody can do qabza. In Pakistan, people can just take over your property. And she said that it was not even on my radar. And I get this message, and she starts making inquiries, and she says that, in fact, there was a family who was living there, and they were refusing to get out. But before they can create their footprint stronger, she sold that house, and now she has a house here and she lives comfortably. And there are so many. I mean, we all know this. Each one of us is here because we all have these incidents throughout our lives. And that is what binds us together today. And none of these incidents were solicited. These are people who are just sharing these things with you. I am sharing these incidents with you to make a very simple point, that Khilafat showers its blessings on every Ahmadi. And it's not a trickle, it's a torrent. It's more like a tsunami that sweeps you away the moment you start paying attention and become aware of its awesome power and mystery. Once, there was a great companion of the promised Messiah ﷺ called Hazrat Maulvi Burhanuddin Jahlami Razillah Ta'ala Anhu. He was a great scholar in his own right. He was sitting in Masjid Mubarak in Qadian. The promised Messiah was there. All of a sudden, Hazrat Maulvi Burhanuddin starts crying. And the promised Messiah ﷺ asked him, "What's wrong?" And he says, हम सुना करते थे कि मसीह आएगा तो खजाने लुटाएगा, और हजूर ने खूब खजाने लुटाए। फिर कहने लगे कि मैं तो फिर भी झुड्डू का झुड्डू ही रहा, यानी अभी तक नकारा का नकारा हूं। ये कहकर फिर चीखें मारकर रोने लगे। He said, we used to hear that when the promised Messiah ﷺ appears in the latter days, he will hand out priceless treasures. Hazur, and he's addressing Hazur, Hazur, you came and you have been handing out priceless treasures since your advent, but I failed to benefit from your priceless gems and am still utterly useless like I was before. And then he started to cry again, Cheekhe maar maar ke. So our khulafa are continuing to hand out those treasures. It is not a trickle. It is a torrent. It has been a torrent for more than a century now. Unfortunately, we remain utterly useless. And yet, we don't cry like Hazrat Burhanuddin Jahlami. Do we ask ourselves, have we benefited from our khulafa? Our khulafa have one purpose, and only one purpose, to connect us with our Creator, with Allah Ta'ala. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Rabe once said that don't just watch him show miracles of acceptance of his prayers or signs of his relationship with Allah. This is Khalifatul Masih Rabe. That don't just look at me. Hazur says, सिर्फ मुझ में ये कैफियतें देखने के ख्वाहा ना हो, अपनी ज़ात में ये कैफियत देखने की तमन्ना करें। अहमदियत इस तरफ आपको बुला रही है। अहमदियत आपको पीर परस्ती की तरफ नहीं, बल्कि खुदा का दोस्त बनने की तरफ बुला रही है। The goal is not to admire and to look at what our khulafa, the signs that they are causing. They are trying to connect you with Allah Ta'ala and giving you the promise that if you do that, the same signs will come from you that you see from their hands. Anytime we talk about Khilafat, the goal is not to talk about Khilafat and marvel at the amazing signs our khulafa show us and how they transform us just by looking at us. That is not what the khulafa want. That's not their goal. I'll give you an example. I was in Canada in 2016, and after an event, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih was about to leave, and like many of us here, we all are thirsty and haris for even one look at Hazur. So me and two other friends, we decide that let's figure out which exit Hazur is going to take. And we stand there hoping that maybe Hazur comes through it and we can wave at him, or we can, maybe he will cast a glance. And we're standing there, and lo and behold, we see Hazur coming towards us. And he actually stopped, and we had a very brief exchange. And then Hazur left to lead the prayers, and the whole kafla is going with him. All the three of us, we're just standing there, just being, extremely ecstatic that, we were able to see Hazur. Hazur stopped, and, he said something to us. And that continued for the next 30 minutes. I don't know exactly what the time was, but it continued for long enough that we just moved from the lobby outside, and then we're standing in front of the hotel, and all of a sudden, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, who had left to lead the prayers, he is now coming back. And we are still there admiring and loving the fact that we met with Hazur. So two of us had the good sense to walk away, so Hazur doesn't see that, why didn't you do namaz? The third one is more honest, but also greedier. So he decides to stand there again, and the car stops. One of the security guard comes out, and he does this. And Hazur comes out and looks at him and says, you didn't go and pray namaz? And Hazur was so disappointed that this friend of mine, he actually started praying as soon as Hazur went in the lobby. But that is the problem, that we can miss the tree for the forest. When we talk about these incidents, they are amazing incidents. I think that the love that we have for a Khalifa, it is one of the most precious things. But it is not the goal. That's not what Hazur wants you to do. Hazur is not, he doesn't care that whether we think that he is important or we love him. He doesn't, khulafa, all the khulafa. There is no difference. Khulafa change, Khilafat remains the same. When you talk about one Khalifa you're talking about all of them. It's like when you look at a stream of water flowing, That water at that point is different, but the stream is still the same. So that was something that we learned, and it was not very pleasant. So I'm going to share some incidents, and I've prefaced it so that you understand that the incident itself and who it involves is unimportant. What is important is that it shows you the majesty of Khilafat, how Khulafa are able to connect with us, guide us, and get us to a point that nobody else can in that way. Many years ago, I met a prisoner of conscience, an Asir Rahimullah in Egypt. He was an Egyptian Ahmadi. He had just been, he was in jail, he was tortured, he was sick, he had hepatitis C. Several months later, he was released. I happened to be in Cairo at that time. I got a message that he wants to see you. I went there. We met, I still remember, we met in the courtyard of this small restaurant. And he came out and he said that it's emotional when you meet these people. These are people that are sacrificing every day for the sake of not us, but of their Khalifa. Because their Khalifa connects them with the promised Messiah. And they're people who have waited their entire lives to recognize these people. We take it for granted sometimes. The love of Khilafat that you see as in non-Pakistani Ahmadis is one of the most incredible things that I've ever seen. And this was the first time I saw it in somebody who's not a Pakistani. And he said that, look, I've been in jail and I wanted to see you because I want to share with you how I became an Ahmadi. And he said that I used to be a member of Hizb ut-Tahrir, a banned extremist organization. And I was full of anger and hatred. I didn't like what was happening to Muslims. I didn't like what was happening to Islam. And he said that one day I was watching TV and I came across this channel where there's a priest, a Coptic priest, maybe Coptic or a Christian priest, and he was using the most vile language attacking Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he said that I was so angry and I didn't know what to do. And he said that I changed the channel. And I was flipping through and all of a sudden I saw an Indian man sitting with some Arabs around him. And luckily, he was answering some of the same allegations that I had just heard on that other channel. And he was answering them so beautifully and in such an amazing way that I had never heard the way, the istidlal, the ability to logically destroy an argument. And he said that for the first time, I felt proud to be a Muslim. And he said, I heard it, but at the very end, the translator, as the program is ending, got up and he did musafa and sort of, bent down doing musafa to this Indian man. And he said, I changed that channel too. I said, but why is an Arab doing that to an Indian man? And he said that continued for several weeks, where I would hear things against Islam. I would go to this program. This is Laka Ma'al Arab. The Indian man is Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Rabe, and it's MTA. And he said, I loved everything about what he said. But I did not like that the Arab interpreter was bending down and kissing his, not bending, but doing musafa and kissing his head. He said, the reason I called you is, and then he said that later I became a Muslim, I became an Ahmadi, and now I've come out of jail. I haven't seen my wife or my children, but before I go and see them, more than anything in this world, I want you to tell Hazrat Khalifa, they call him Hazrat Amirul Mu'mineen, Ayyadallahu Ta'ala bin Nasr al-Aziz, that if I could have the opportunity to embrace you in the way that Arab used to embrace you on MTA, I would not care if I never see my family again. And he has never met Hazrat Khalifat al-Masih. He has never met any Khalifa. And it's not new. The point about Khilafat changing, but Khilafat staying the same. 1941, the grandfather of current Amir Sahib Kababir passes away. Hazrat Muslim Maud, during his janazah, or after his janazah, he says that unme जिस तरह अवैस करनी के दिल में बावजूद इसके कि उन्होंने रसूल करीम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम को नहीं देखा था, गैर मामूली इश्क पाया जाता था, इसी तरह उनके दिल में मोहब्बत पाई जाती थी। उनके पोते ने ख़त में लिखा है कि उन्होंने अपनी नज़ा की हालत में कहा कि खलीफतुल मसीह को मेरा सलाम पहुंचा दिया जाए, हालांकि उन्होंने हमको नहीं देखा, हमने उनको नहीं देखा। उनके दिल में इतनी शदीद मोहब्बत थी कि मौत की हालत में भी उन्हें ये बात याद रही और उन्होंने मुझे अपना सलाम पहुंचाया। ये सब ईमान की बरकत है जो उन्हें हासिल हुई। That somebody who has never met him, he was 112 years old, but he got connected to Hazrat Muslim Maud the way Hazrat Awais Karni was connected to Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to the extent that as he was dying, that's the last act, that please convey my salam to Hazrat Muslim Maud, somebody that he has never met. How does this connection work? I once asked somebody this, somebody who has traveled in Hazur's Qafla, and they said, don't ask this question. That's the wrong question to ask. And look at how Hazrat Muslim Maud is mentioning it. It's the point about Peer Parasti. Hazur is not talking about, this is not towards him. He's saying that it's his own iman. That's why he can see that I am Muslim Maud. But that's not a source of any pride for Hazrat Muslim Maud, because he knows that when you become a moment, there's unity in that. You no longer stay different. I'll give you another example. Many years ago, there was, in a Central Asian country, the government there declared us, or they deregistered us as a religious organization, and they said that they brought a lawsuit against us, the Jamaat in that country, and this is a Jamaat that has no Pakistanis, almost. And the government said that this is an extremist organization. And I remember I met an intelligence official, and I was trying to tell him, I said, look, I'm really confused because I understand that, people can say other things about us, but nobody has ever said that we are an extremist organization, even Pakistan. And he said, I know that you're not. And I was trying to tell him and convince him that, look, we're not extremists. He said, look, I know that you guys are not an extremist. That's not my problem. My problem is that wherever you guys go, people come after you. And then he said that, don't you see what happened in Indonesia? And in Indonesia, a mob had lynched 2 Ahmadis. He said, that's what we are trying to avoid. And again, that shows why the world needs Khilafat today. Where is the justice? I said to him, if you come to New York and if you're walking in Manhattan and somebody punches you, is your solution to try and go after the person who punched you? If you want peace, you go after the person who's punching you. But the problem in these countries is that they keep going after the people that are being punched. Anyway, so they're trying to declare us an extremist organization. We meet some diplomats and some other people, even the lawyers, and they say that, look, they've already made up this decision. They're under pressure from a lot of other governments, and the best thing you can do is to try and extend the proceedings, right? Try to delay it, get a postponement, and use your diplomatic pressure. So this got to Khilafat al-Masih, and Hazur said no. Decisiveness, right? The bravery, the courage of a Khalifa. He said, no, you just continue. There's a hearing coming up. Then somebody said, I had gone there as a legal expert, but a very stalwart missionary of our Jamaat had accompanied me at that time as a religious expert. And we got feedback that they had just expelled 2 missionaries, and now we had brought a foreign missionary, and that would not be viewed positively, so he should not go to court. And the missionary Sahib was adamant that this is why my Khalifa has sent me. I am going to go to court and do whatever has to be done. I don't care if I'm arrested. He said to me that I've actually written my wasiyat before I came. But I said to him, "Okay, please write to Hazur, and you can say that this is what Qudus is asking your guidance on." So Allah bless him. He wrote to Hazur, and the next day he called me into his room, and he had a smile on his face. And he said, Hazur ka jawab aa gaya. Hazur has responded. And jawab Hazur ka, the way it comes, it said, "ठीक है, आप ना जाएं, अव्वल तो मजहबी बहस होगी नहीं, अव्वल तो मजहबी बहस होगी नहीं, और जितनी होगी उसके लिए कुदूस ही काफ़ी है." Exact words. So Hazur said that, okay, don't go if there's a security issue. There will be no bahas or religious discussion, but if there is, Qudus can manage it. So that obviously for me, that was a big thing, right? I mean, I get to court and I'm really nervous, and all of a sudden I see the prosecutor and these Maulvis with long beards and hatred in their eyes, and one of them has this massive stack of books. And one of them says, I still remember, it says, "Ahmadi murtad nahi zindeeq hai." Something like that. I still don't know what zindeeq means. But there was some distinction between these things, and I'm thinking, Hazur said that there's not going to be a bahas. I'm sitting here, what am I going to do? And so the hearing starts, and the judge was upset at them because they were late. And they said that, Your Honor, this group has been declared non-Muslim in Pakistan, and they're here in our country now. And I said that Islam says that La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, and Pakistan's constitution cannot determine whether I consider myself to be a Muslim or not. And I, during my turn, I said to him that, he had said that we are Ahl Sunnat wal Jamaat during his comments to the judge, right? This is just the beginning, the opening statements. And I had just read something in my research when I was preparing that Pakistan had banned Ahl Sunnat wal Jamaat as a terrorist organization in Pakistan. Okay? It's like a name for Lashkar-e-Jhangvi. So I said that if you want to listen, Pakistan has never said that Ahmadis are extremists or terrorists, but they have said that Ahl Sunnat wal Jamaat is a terrorist organization, so by that token, you shouldn't be here. So we were about to start this conversation into the doctrinal part of it, where when one of the prosecutors says, or the Maulvi says that, oh, there is some technical issue, and he starts fighting that the hearing should not be continued. And our Sadr Saab gets up and they're talking in a language, and my translator is so engrossed that I can't figure out. But everybody wants the hearing to go forward. But the Maulvi is telling them that no, she disrespected us, and we are not going to do this because this person, his power of attorney is outdated. So he doesn't even represent the Jamaat. And Sadr Saab said that, look, I just gave you the wrong document. I'll give you the better document next hearing. Let's continue. So we were all eager to continue at that point. They said no. So the judge said, okay, well, we'll come back in a couple of days. I think it was 3 days, but we come back after 3 days, and the same group is still there with all their books, and the judge says that I've had a chance to read the documents and all the submissions in the case. This case is baseless, I'm throwing it out. Awwal to bahas hogi nahi, jitni hogi uske liye Qudus kafi hai. Qudus knows that La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah means that I'm a Muslim. So that evening, the Jamaat was very happy, obviously. We all got together. So one of the pioneer members of the Jamaat that had founded that Jamaat, Khilafat Masih Rabi Rahimahullah, had sent him in the 90s. He came up to me and he said to me, and he had actually received us at the airport. And he said to me, he gave me a hug, and he said, you know, जब तुम्हें airport पे लेने आया, when I came to the airport to pick you up, and I saw you for the first time, I said कि ये हजूर ने किसको भेज दिया? इसने क्या करना है? That he looked at me and he said, what is he going to do? How can Hazur have sent him? But then he said that now, you know, I want to hug you. And the thing is that he was 100% right. That there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that I had nothing to do with any of this. I was struggling just to eat food there and to survive. But this is the tailwind of Khilafat. When Allah Ta'ala, this word comes out of the mouth of Hazur, and Allah Ta'ala has ghairat for what he said. And that's what's going to give you the outcome. It's nothing that you do. It's not your law degree or your medical degree. It is what Allah Ta'ala's Khalifa has said, and it's because Allah is going to make it happen. Sorry if I can just... Very quickly, I want to talk about partition and Qadian. We all know the importance of Qadian to us. We don't know the unbelievable effort that Hazrat Muslim Maud single-handedly, the battle that he waged to save Qadian. We are all here. Amir Sahib was maybe a month or 2 months old. 4 million Muslims in East Punjab were forced out of East Punjab in 1947. 1 million were killed. There was a plan to wipe out Muslims from East Punjab. The Jamaat that people accuse of not believing in jihad, Allah Ta'ala, through their Khalifa, gave them this amazing outcome that one of our worst enemies, this newspaper called Zamidar, he said that if the other 4 million Muslims in East Punjab had done what Qadian did, the history of India would have been different. Not only Hazur saved everybody living in Qadian, there were some people who were unfortunately, tragically martyred, but he saved the Nizam, he saved our records, the financial record, he saved the children, the women. He sent his own children there to make sure that people don't think that we abandoned Qadian. He did not want to leave Qadian. He even did his wasiyat that if I am killed, elect a new Khalifa. But he left because Khilafat had to go on. But he still managed to hang on to Qadian. There was a documentary yesterday, and I was listening to it, and they said that Hazur says that I initially thought that there was only one tree that I need to transplant from there to here. I had to transplant a whole garden, a whole bagh. And it took a cost. It's not easy. We didn't have the resources then. But it was single-handed determination of our Khalifa that today we have control of Qadian, and we still go there and we enjoy our jalsas, and I'll tell you the cost of it. There was we were actually physically, we were defending Qadian, and there was a wife whose husband was there. And she wrote to her husband in Qadian from Lahore, and she says, इस्तक़लाल और हिम्मत से और जवां मर्दी के साथ डटे रहो और इसको फतह करना आपका फ़र्ज़ है। जब तक हजूर का हुक्म ना हो आप कादियान को छोड़कर यहाँ बिल्कुल ना आएँ। मुझे कादियान की याद सताती है, बिल्कुल दिल नहीं लगता। हजूर काफ़ी कमज़ोर हो चुके हैं, कादियान के गम में उनकी कमर खमीदा हो चुकी है। काश कि हम हजूर के गम को दूर कर सकते। A father wrote to his son who was also in Qadian, कादियान की सरासीमगी ने सारी जमात को नीम पागल बना दिया है और हज़रत अक़दस खुद आसमानी मदद और ताईद पर कामिल भरोसा रखते हैं। क्या होने वाला है कुछ नहीं कहा जा सकता। हजूर की नमाजों में दुआ का शोर क़यामत होता है। हज़रत दिन रात मुसल्ले पर रहते हैं। मेरा ईमान है कि ज़रूर फ़तह और गलबा होगा। काश आप फ़तह लोगों में ज़िंदा रहें। This is the price. Only Hazur's prayers helped save Qadian. But the most amazing thing is not the fact that Hazur was able to save Qadian, but even after he had saved Qadian, lost everything, your markaz, you were in Ratan Bagh. If you read Al-Fazl, they talk about Hazur has asked people, if you have extra blankets, send them to me, because I need to take care of my Ahmadis. People would lie down in the baramda with their children, not knowing what to do, where to go. He still had to keep the Jamaat going all over the world. And during that time, he asks the US Consulate General in Lahore, the American Consulate General in Lahore, that I would like to see you. And we don't have Rabba yet. Right? So this is really the most difficult period that the Jamaat is going through. That Consulate General wrote a cable to the Secretary of State, George Marshall, at that time. And the subject is Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad. And he talks about Hazur. I don't have time to go into all of that. But what Hazur says to him is that, look, your missionaries come here, and that's okay. But you talk about freedoms, you talk about freedom of speech, you talk about freedom of religion. Why aren't you letting my missionaries come to the US? And Hazur doesn't say that they should go there. Hazur says they need to enlighten you. This is Allah Ta'ala's Khalifa. He's talking to the diplomat of the biggest superpower in the world at that time. And he's telling him that we will enlighten you. And what the guy said was, he said that Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad is one of the most well-informed people in these parts of the world, because his Ahmadis write to him from all over the world. That's why you need Khilafat. If you don't have Khilafat, you will never understand what the Ummah needs. Hazrat Muslimat has even said that you can't have zakat, you can't have namaz. So I think that the last point, Amir Sahib, with your permission, that I would like, if I've gone over.
I would like to read his comments to the State Department so that people can understand. Therefore, 2 or 3, 4 lines,
Ji Mir Sahib.
if you have it.
Ji Mir Sahib, I do.
Amjad had it, but anyway. Okay, go ahead.
Ji Mir Sahib, my apologies. So I have the part where he says that, this is the cable where it says, he said that he quite realized that the US did not care to be invaded or colonized by, you're referring to the prophet part, right?
Ji.
That part there's a part where he says that he's a prophet in his own right about Hazrat Muslima. The impact that he had on this senior seasoned diplomat in one meeting in Ratan Bagh. There were no carpets there were no air conditioners, there was no fancy stuff. But the force, the power of Allah's Khalifa and telling that diplomat, that's how you influence and you change the world. You don't do that by becoming like them. You do that by becoming perfectly obedient to your khulafa. And the last point that I wanted to make was that Khulafa don't care whether we understand their importance. We need to understand their importance so we can understand our own importance. Do we really, truly do justice to the role that Allah Ta'ala has assigned us? This is an army of Khilafat here. In every country that we are, imagine if Hazrat Masih Maud knew, every little jalsa, sometimes when I talk to refugee families in Thailand or in Malaysia, I tell them that Hazur looks at you as his army. You are furthering his mission, but we come here and we forget about all that. We come here, we don't understand that we are here. We have more degrees now. Our bank accounts are bigger. It's not because of anything that we have done. It's because of the blessings of the Nizam that Khulafa have created, that we continue to prosper personally as well. So unless we do whatever we can to understand the importance of Khilafat and what it means to us, there is no difference. Oh, Jazakallah.
Narae Takbir! Narae Takbir! Narae Takbir!
So he says, this is to Secretary of State George Marshall, I have the honor to report that on December 16th, 1948, Council Qudus and myself had the honor of being invited to tea by Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad, head of the Ahmadiyya movement of Qadian, at his Lahore headquarters. That the department should be fully aware that this was an honor. It may be stated that the Hazrat, second son of the founder, is a prophet in his own right, has authentic visions, and occupies roughly the position of Pope or Holy Father of this interesting Islamic sect. And then he sends a memo to the visa people that these missionaries should be allowed. Then he says the Ahmadiyya may be considered as mildly schismatic Muslims, although, and this is an amazing point, they adhere more closely to Islamic precepts than many who consider themselves entirely Orthodox. Even an American in 1948 understands that the Islam that Hazrat Muslim Maud is presenting is more Orthodox. How can they say that we are not Muslims? Unless their eyes were shut and they don't want to see the truth that Allah Ta'ala's Nabi has brought. Zindabad. 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 Ya Masrur. So he says, although they adhere more closely to Islamic precepts than many who consider themselves entirely Orthodox, for this reason they have at times been persecuted by the Sunni majority, and like other persecuted people, repression seems to have sharpened their wits and created in them a strong sense of cohesion and solidarity. As a group, they appear to have a much higher level of intelligence and education than the surrounding masses. Sir Muhammad Zafarullah Khan, Pakistan's foreign minister, who has made such an excellent impression in the international gatherings at which he has assisted, is a member of this sect. And in Lahore, a surprising number of well-placed, solid citizens are also found within its ranks. They claim throughout India and other countries some 800,000 to 1 million adherents. Possibly correct in his theory that the decline of Islam began with and is due to the decrease of proselytizing spirit of the Muslims, grown soft by conquest. The founder of the movement, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Wasalam, the promised Messiah, and Imam Mahdi, self-proclaimed prophet, next after Muhammad, went in for missionary work, and the present head and his adherents follow the same policy. They are reputed to have some 1,000 converts in the US at present. And then he says that he said that he he talked about concerning the possibility of missionary work in America. He said that he quite realized that the U.S. did not care to be invaded or colonized by Asiatic peoples, and he had no quarrel with our immigration laws as such. However, we talked a great deal about freedom, and Hazur is telling him about the U.S., and we were very fond of it as well, but we were also noted for sending American missionaries out to Asiatic people, and would it not then seem that this should be a two-way traffic? His movement would like to send their teachers and missionaries to the States for not over 2 years at a time, for the double purpose of ministering to the American flock already established and bringing enlightenment to others. And then he says that this is now the Hazrat added that his people were law-abiding. It was a cardinal principle of the movement that wherever located, the Ahmadiyya should give full loyalty to the legally constituted government, restricting their activities to the spiritual plane only, leaving the temporal where it belonged. In my opinion, and then he goes into about how we have.
Yeah, that's what I wanted.
Jazakumullah.
Narae Takbir. Narae Takbir. Islam Ahmadiyya.